All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's Angela Fobbs, the chair of the Global Black Caucus, and I'm here with Dr. Kenton Barnes, who is a lecturer at TU Braunschweig in Germany. He's also the vice chair of my country committee, Germany, and he's also a fellow Ohioan. Welcome, Kenton.
Thank you, Angela. It's nice to be here.
Yes, it's nice to have you. And we're here on the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. And this is a special day for many reasons, but it's also an important date. Can you tell us a little bit about the Voting Rights Act and the signing and any history that you want to share with us?
Sure. The Voting Rights Act was signed on this day, August 6, 1965, by Lyndon Johnson as a direct result of lots of events that had happened before them. Primarily, the main one being the march from Selma to Montgomery, in which John Lewis, who was recently departed, took part in. And the march from Selma to Montgomery was actually took place in three phases because the first two phases actually weren't able to be completed. The first phase is the one that we all know, or the first attempt was the one that we all know, in which the Montgomery state troopers, not the Montgomery state troopers, but the state troopers in Alabama went out to meet the marchers as they set out from Selma to go to Montgomery. And then they were brutally attacked by the police and trampled. And that's where John Lewis then received his head injuries at that particular time. Because of that, lots of other people came to Selma at the behest of the SNCC and John Lewis and the other organizers of the march. And they gained more publicity because of that. If the police had just let them march from from Selma to Montgomery, we might not ever have a civil rights, Voting Rights Act. But because they did, because it became so publicized, not only a second time, but also the third time, which is when federal troops had to be sent in to protect the marchers on the way from Selma to Montgomery, we probably never would have had the Voting Rights Act. So one of the reasons that the voting rights, the march took place, or one of the goals of the organizers was to gain attention, or to direct attention of the country unto the marchers. And as John Lewis said before he died, he had only expected to become to be jailed or to be arrested. He didn't expect that the violence would get out of hand the way that it did. But in doing so, like I said before, the nation's attention, not only the nation, but also the world's attention, was directed to Selma and the happenings that had taken place there.
Wow, yeah. It's funny how history works. I think if it hadn't been for all the things that happened with Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, that maybe people wouldn't have, when it got down to George Floyd, that they probably wouldn't have protested. So sometimes it's a terrible thing, but it takes injustice to make people see the light, and I just want to give our condolences to John Lewis's family, because and I kind of think of us all as John Lewis's family. Like, he's been a part of all of our lives for so long. It's going to be hard to go on without him, but go on we must, because we have to continue the fight.
But I think that if we didn't do that, that John Lewis would be very disappointed, and he would probably be turning in his grave. Because even though we had the Voting Rights Act of 1965, in 2013, the Supreme Court weakened a portion of the Voting Rights Act, which made it possible for Republican governments to start enacting voter ID laws, or voter suppression moves to basically suppress the vote and to target minorities and brown, black communities from having the right to vote. So
Yes.
just because we have the Voting Rights Act doesn't mean that our work is done. We still need Congress to re-strengthen the Voting Rights Act. It had been strengthened many times since it was signed by Johnson in 1965 and 1970, 1975, I think it was, and some other times the Voting Rights Act had always been strengthened or renewed and strengthened so that it became what we knew it to be in 2013. But then because of a suit against the government, then the Supreme Court decided that the Voting Rights Act, or Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, was outdated and that it needed to be updated. So they just nullified that part of it, giving, as I said before, governments the opportunity to enact laws restricting the right to vote or making it more difficult for certain communities to have the right to vote.
Yes. And right now, our current Democratic Congress passed H.R. 4, which is the Voting Rights Advancement Act of 2019. That's right, they passed it in 2019 and it's 2020. Guess who won't do anything with it? Can you guess, Kenton?
Well, I can only think that would be Mitch McConnell, who
That's
is
right.
controlling
It's
everything that
Mitch
happens.
McConnell. Mitch McConnell, who is up for reelection this year, and if we're lucky, will not be reelected. He's a senator from Kentucky who happens to be the what are we calling him? The majority leader of the Senate. And the Republicans currently have the majority in the Senate, but they have a lot of seats up this year.
Oh yeah,
So it's really important to vote, not
that's,
just if you have a senator, but we need to vote in a new president because the current one sucks. Uh,
that's putting it mildly.
yes, yes. This is a all ages show, so we will not use any bad language. Although, and there's no need to use bad language. Sucks is appropriate.
That's
Um,
it is.
we need to vote in. We need to maintain control of the House of Representatives, which we currently have by 40 votes, and which we could make that margin wider. No need to keep too many Republicans around because they're not doing anything. And then as the Senate,
Except for making our lives more
well,
difficult.
yes, that's true. They're making our lives more difficult. The Senate has more Republicans up this year, and the best thing to do is to vote them all out. Vote,
That's true.
vote, vote.
I was reading an article this morning, I think in the Daily Coast, saying that there are 16 Senate seats that are in play. And some of them are going to flip. Of course, we're probably going to lose Doug Jones in Alabama. I hate to say that, but that's probably the one that's most assuredly is going to flip back to the Republican column. But we also have some Senate races in other places, for example, in Colorado, North Carolina, Georgia, even Maine, Alaska is also being talked about, Nevada, Arizona. So there are a lot of places where we have an opportunity to pick up seats and to regain the majority in the Senate. And then I also saw some prognosis saying that it could boil down to that a lot of Senate races go the way that they have always gone, and we will come down to a 50-50 split. And if that happens, of course, it's going to rely on the vice president, whoever that will be, to break a tie if we come up with a tie in the Senate.
Yeah.
So down ballot votes are just as essential and important as the presidential ballot.
Yes, down ballot is very important. So if you are a voter overseas and you can vote down ballot, because many of us can, even though a lot of people don't like to because they feel like somehow they're not, they don't live there. But these are the people. Think of it like a baseball franchise. So you've got the farm teams,
Mhm.
and they're bringing up to the major leagues. So all these kind of crazy Republicans that are coming to Congress, a lot of them were in the House of the state legislator or the city, councils and things like this, or county commissioners. Don't don't not vote. You can't
That's
let
true.
these people get a
Go for the
foothold.
dog catcher.
Yes, exactly. And vote for every possible person and that you can, and don't let any of them have an R next to their name because they're dangerous. They're
That's
very,
true.
very dangerous, and they're looking to control people's voting rights. They want to take us back to a time. I think everybody thinks it's the 50s, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a time before the Civil War that they're looking to take us back to. That's how it seems to me. The things that they want to get rid of rights for African Americans and other people of color. They want to get rid of women's rights so that women can't control their own bodies or their lives. It's not just their bodies, but their lives.
Yes.
They want to get back to a time when only property owning white men could vote, but we're not going to let them do that. This is not going to
Good enough.
happen
Yes.
because everybody should vote. If you're overseas, you should go to votefromabroad.org and request your absentee ballot. If you are in the United States and seeing this by some chance, you can go to iwillvote.com, select your state, and pick whatever, and register to vote. And also ask for a absentee ballot, also too, so you can vote from home, so you don't have to go out in the COVID laden streets of wherever it is you're living.
Mhm.
But voting is the most important thing, and I think it's so many people don't want to vote because either they say there's nobody I like, or they're not doing what I want. But the way that you get people to do what you want as far as voting is to vote.
Yes.
People
That's
pay
true.
attention to the voters, not the non-voters, because the non-voters don't have any say. You're just giving up all your power. Don't give up your power. Take your power and vote for Democrats and vote for Biden, and don't vote for in such as in gosh Alabama. The person that's running against Doug Jones is a former football coach,
Yep. Tuberman. That's it. Tuberville.
Tuberman or something like that.
Tuberville. I think it's
Tuberville. That's what it is. Tuberville.
yeah, become
Which,
tied.
I mean, come on. That is, I think yes, I believe that everyone could be a part of government, but if he's a Republican from Alabama, he's not up to any good. So tell your friends and family who live in Alabama to register to vote, check the registrations, make sure they haven't been purged from the voting rolls, and re-register if they have to. And if
Mhm.
you're from overseas, please request your ballot from votefromabroad.org. It's very important this year. We cannot go backwards. No
That is
one
true.
wants this.
That is so true. But the thing is, not only to request the ballot, when you get the ballot, please fill it out and return it. It doesn't make any, it doesn't do any good to have a ballot that sits on your table and is not returned. That's
Yes.
a vote that is wasted,
Yes.
that is no vote actually. So as soon as you get the ballot, fill it out and return it because Trump is doing everything he can to win this election by cheating. He's talking about now reappropriating money for the U.S. Postal Service and making it more difficult for people not only overseas but also in the United States to return their ballots. So they are projecting that it's going to take a lot longer for the ballot to be received by the election boards in your particular states or cities or wherever. So make sure that as soon as you get the ballot, please fill it out and return it Yeah.
Yes. Yes, return it as soon as possible. There are about 30 states that will allow you to return your ballot by electronic means, meaning fax or email. If you want to find out specific information about what your state allows, you can again go to votefromabroad.org, and the information is there. Um, there are several services. If they only will take a fax, if you have a scanner, you
Mhm.
can scan it into your sometimes I think there's a couple of scan apps for your phone that you can scan your ballot in and turn it into a fax. You're not limited by having an actual fax machine, or how am I going to get my hard copy document into a PDF if you don't have an actual scanner on your printer or something like that. But yeah, get your ballot back as quickly as possible. Um, I just wanted to talk briefly about the history of just a brief history of voting rights in America. Can you tell us something about, do you know, can you give us some information about what happened after Reconstruction?
Sure. Okay. There's this great amendment called the 14th Amendment, which gave African Americans the right to citizenship and also the right to vote. And from 1865 till about 1877, lots of African Americans did vote, especially in the South, because that's where we were concentrated. And lots of African Americans elected African Americans to office to represent them in the US Senate, State Senate, US House, state houses. There are African Americans all over the place being elected from 1865 to 1868, I think it is, to 1877, the period of Reconstruction. However, the North got tired of protecting, so to speak, the freed slaves and rebuilding the South. And so they eventually pulled back the troops who were there. And then the South started regaining its lost power, because we had an idiot president back then, Johnson, who tried to do everything he could to rebuild the South in its former glory. Even though he was not a landowner, he was just a common person, but he still had sympathy, or he felt he was a Southern sympathizer. And so he gave the South the opportunity to reenact some of the things that they had. However, they couldn't do it the way that they did, so they called it Jim Crow. They started enacting what we call first the Black Codes, which was a very subtle way to segregate Blacks from whites, and then the full-blown Jim Crow after that. And in doing this, the KKK came into existence and worked in concert with a lot of the Southerners to basically disenfranchise African Americans. They intimidated them, they killed them, and basically by 1880, there were hardly any Black people who were voting anymore. So they had basically gotten rid of all the gains that we had been given through the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution, which were called the Reconstruction Amendments, that gave us equality and things like that. So it took a long time for African Americans to start to regain the rights that they had lost. And when we think of the civil rights movement, a lot of people think of what we call the modern civil rights movement, but actually the civil rights movement began at the end of Reconstruction, when we lost our rights, and then we started trying to regain them. And this is what most scholars would call the long civil rights movement. So if we go back to that particular era, then we can see that little by little, African Americans started regaining the rights that they had lost. It took a long time to do that, but the civil rights movement would never have been able to exist had it not been for Booker T. Washington, for example, had it not been for W.E.B. Du Bois, had it not been for Alan Locke, had it not been for Ida B. Wells and all these other people upon whom the modern civil rights was built. So that is a brief, a compact historical lesson of how we had our rights, how we lost them, and then how we started regaining them. And I could go into a lot of other things, but that would be a little bit off topic. But there were lots of different cases that went before the Supreme Court, or that helped to advance the civil rights in the African American community.
So, what do you think could possibly happen if Joe Biden and other Democrats lose this election because people don't vote?
Well, I think the worst thing that could happen was we would have a loss of democracy in the United States, that we would become a totalitarian nation or an authoritarian nation in which Donald Trump tries to wrest power upon himself and become some, yeah, totalitarian dictator or, uh, yeah, or return to monarchism. I don't think there would be a monarchy, but he would be de facto monarch or something like that. Because you can see the signs of him taking control of the government in all branches. Well, not the legislature, but the judiciary, the court system, his blatant, blatant, what I want to say,
Flagrant.
yeah. Or disregard for the rule of law.
Yes.
So he's doing, starting to go little by little to try to dismantle the government as we know it. And I think if Trump is reelected, that will only be increased. And if we ever get through the next 4 years of Trump, I think that would be a miracle, because if Trump is elected again, I don't think that the United States will exist in its current form.
Yes, that is what I think too, that we'll be the United States, but that will just be a brand.
Yep.
But what the United States is known for, it won't exist anymore. It barely exists now. We're just the whole world is holding its breath, waiting, hoping that people, the American people, will do what they can. And so that's what we hope too, is that the American people, uh, of all types, persuasions, will realize that this man is a threat to our
Yes.
democracy, and that we have to actually take steps we have to do the thing that we can do while we can still do it.
Yes.
Because if you're waiting for a better candidate than Joe Biden, we're not going to make it.
No.
In 4 years, we're not even going to have an election. So that's what I think. It could be something else. We could have a sham election like they had in Russia, where they voted Putin dictator for life or something like that. But it won't be an actual election.
That's true. Yeah.
So everybody, please vote. It is the most important thing that you will do this year. And I don't say that lightly, because there's a lot of heavy things going on in the world. Over 50,000 people in America have died from COVID. I read an article that was like every 8 minutes somebody dies from COVID.
Yep.
And the worst part about all of this, I mean, the death is terrible, but the fact that our president is so callous and nonchalant, saying it is what it is. Like, what is that? How can you couldn't be, okay, you could be less feeling and caring, but but you'd have to really, like dance on people's graves, or I don't know, something to make it less callous.
Yes.
than how he is. Yeah, we have to control this pandemic, and it's never going to happen under Trump. Never. Because it was never under control in general before. They just decided, oh, we have to open everything up.
Yes.
Yes. And so now it's open. And hey, why not send the children back to school?
Oh.
I'm sure that won't be a problem, right? I mean, what?
Did you see that Twitter and Facebook removed some information that the Trump campaign had published about children being immune to the COVID virus?
Yeah. That's
where
just
does he
ridiculous.
get this information? I don't understand where he gets this. He has to get it from somewhere, but I don't know where it is.
He got it from the same place where early in the pandemic, there was something going around about Black people not being, but being immune to COVID, which is ridiculous.
Yes.
Like, everyone can catch this. There's not one person alive that can't catch it.
Yes.
So please wear a mask. Please take care. please vote Donald Trump out of office by a large enough margin that we don't have to wonder what he's going to do. Although, no matter what, the time between November and January 21st is going to be a scary and dangerous time. But it doesn't matter. Vote anyway, because it would be scary and dangerous if he won. It would be scary
Mhm.
and dangerous if he lost. Um, yeah, but it's better if he lost. So um, remember that voting is our right as American citizens, no matter where you are in the world, you can vote. And if you don't vote, you are giving away your power. Do not give away your power. That's all the power that the main power that you have. Um, Go to votefromabroad.org. If you're overseas, go to I will vote if you're in the United States. But whatever you do, vote. Um,
Remember that a lot of people, if you're an African American, a lot of people died so that you could have the right to vote. If you're a woman, a lot of women sacrificed a lot of time, also their lives, in order for you to be able to vote. The only people that the vote was guaranteed to in 1776 or 1789, when the Constitution was ratified, were white men. So
white men that owned property,
right,
not just rando white people, but you had to be somebody.
right.
Yeah.
So now that everyone in the United States who is a citizen has the right to vote, so please use your voice, use your power, and go out and vote. Vote for people who will be reasonable, people who are humanitarian, people who believe in science, people who believe that the environment is in trouble. Because we need people like that so that we can still have a place to live, in the next 100 years. Our children, have a place to live in 100 years. Make sure that the country still exists in the next 50 years or even 10 years.
Or
So
four in the next 4 years.
in the next 4 years.
It doesn't have to go that far out in the future.
So please go to votefromabroad.org if you have not already registered and requested your ballot.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for joining me today, Kenton. It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you very much. It was a joy being here.
And I guess we'll see you soon this weekend on at around 6 on Sunday, Central European summertime. Uh, I'll be interviewing all our female delegates for the DNC convention, and that should be a really fun interview. So I'll see you next time, and thanks, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.